This is an atomic bomb. This is a mushroom cloud. And these are 8 scientists who changed the world forever. Don't believe me? Don't worry, we'll go over it soon enough. But what are atomic bombs? How have they impacted the world? And why are they relevant today? In this documentary, I will go over the history of atomics and why the creation of the atomic bomb was a historical turning point that changed war tactics, global politics, and the course of World War II. This is the story of the biggest turning point, the apex weapon. This is the story of the atomic bomb. The theory of atomics began at the end of 1938. Scientists such as Otto Frisch theorized that atoms could be split to release lots of energy. They called this process fission. They calculated that the energy released from this fission is about 200 million electron volts, or about 20 megatons of TNT, all at once. Later in early January 1939, this was confirmed to be true through even more testing. By mid-1939, atomic sciences had become a bigger topic among the community. As experiments continued, voices of concern rose. On October 11th, famous physicist Albert Einstein wrote a letter to President Roosevelt. The letter described the new powerful atomic bombs that were being theorized about. He recommended that the U.S. government investigate them and keep watch. The last remarks in his letter reflected the concern of U.S. nuclear scientists over foreign countries' capabilities to harness this power. While atomics was slowly shaping up in the U.S., a new conflict began to arise across the globe. New Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, stormed through Europe and raised hell. In September 1939, Nazi troops took Poland, and a clear divide had started to form in Europe, marking the beginnings of World War II. As war raged on in Europe, the U.S. was unbiased and did not participate in any of the conflicts, that is, until December 1941. At 7:48 a.m. on December 7th, Japan led a retaliation bombing against Hawaii's Pearl Harbor following U.S. trade restrictions. With this attack, the U.S. was set for revenge, and on December 8th, they declare war on Japan. A few days later, the United States also declares war on Germany and Italy, officially bringing them into World War II. Throughout the next year, Japan attacks many of its neighboring territories and grows to an enormous size, which threatens the U.S. Throughout the war, hundreds of thousands of lives are lost on both sides. During this time on December 2nd, 1942, lead scientist Enrico Fermi and 42 observers watched a self-sustaining nuclear reaction operating for 4.5 minutes. This was a breakthrough in atomics and showed that nuclear reactions could be controlled. With this knowledge in hand, nuclear sciences seriously ramp up. Over the next 2 years, a few notable events will occur. On November 4th, 1943, the world's first full-scale reactor reaches criticality for the first time. On June 6, 1944, an event known as D-Day occurs, and Allied forces gain a foothold in northern France. Lastly, on September 26, 1944, Hanford B's reactor will reach criticality. It would eventually produce plutonium for weaponry in 1945. But what do these events all mean, and what do they build up to? Well, that is for part 3. In 1945, the war still raged across Europe and Asia, and people started to become restless and wished the war away. Early in 1945, the war would begin to end as Allied troops pushed furiously through German lines. On April 30th, Adolf Hitler commits suicide inside of a German bunker, and the German superpower loses its leader. Only a few days later, on May 7th, Nazi Germany surrenders to Allied forces. However, war still raged on in the Pacific and threatened those who were caught in the crossfire. In the Western Hemisphere, on July 16, 1941, the Gadget, the world's first atomic device, successfully detonates for a test in New Mexico. This is a monumental moment because it proves the capabilities and power of atomic weapons. Later, in July 26, 1945, components of the famous atomic bomb, Little Boy, are unloaded at Tinian Island in the South Pacific and are assembled. All of these events would lead up to one big climax, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Early on the morning of August 6, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay was brought out of the hangar and prepared to be flown by Colonel Paul Tibbets. The bomber was loaded with a 9,000-pound, state-of-the-art nuclear bomb named Little Boy with power equivalent to 15 kilotons of TNT. At 8:15 a.m., the Enola Gay performed a bombing run over the city of Hiroshima, right before speeding off and closing special windows to protect the pilot's eyes. In the first few seconds, the bomb's inner workings split an atom in half using radioactive particles, about a half a mile above the ground. People outside saw two flashes brighter than the sun for a few seconds. Those in the immediate vicinity were vaporized. For those a bit farther away, they were blinded, burnt, and blasted with X-rays. Those lucky enough to be in a building would not be safe either. Within a minute after the blast, airwaves shot out, caused by the intense pressure imbalances. First, an overpressure shock wave near the ground shot out, followed by an outward blast that destroyed all structures within a mile from ground zero. This covered people in dangerous debris and destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses. The bomb had an estimate of 140,000 casualties. Then, 3 days later, on August 9th, the same thing happened, only this time over Hiroshima, with an estimated 40,000 additional casualties. That night, the Emperor of Japan released his statement and officially surrendered. He is quoted as saying, "I do not desire any further destruction of cultures, nor any additional misfortune for the peoples of the world. On this occasion, we have to bear the unbearable." A few days later, the Japanese formally signed the Instrument of Surrender on September 2nd, 1945, officially ending the most deadly and destructive war in human history. With all that said and done, the bombs really showed a turning point in history through three major areas. Firstly, as seen in the previous sections, the creation of the bombs was the turning point in World War II and resulted in the end of the war. This is due to the immense destruction from the bombs, which forced Japan into surrender. Even though the bombs led to many deaths, they saved countless lives from combat and finally allowed the world to rebuild after the decade of destruction, thus marking a historical turning point. Secondly, the creation of the bombs was also a turning point in global politics. Due to the bombs' creation, many councils and administrations were established to moderate the global use of weapons, such as atomic bombs. They also led to the Cold War, in which politics between the US and the USSR were tested in a tense arm race. Even today, we see nukes present in our politics, and they play a crucial role in keeping peace and negotiations with other countries. This large presence in negotiations and international conflicts shows how the creation of nuclear weapons was a turning point in politics. Third, the creation of atomic bombs has led to a change in the way combat works. As seen in the video, the threat of mass destruction in warfare is now all too common. This has led to very risky wars and has also led to a decrease of conventional wars against nations who are backed by nuclear weapons. From this change, we can deduce that the creation of the atomic bombs represented a turning point in combat. To summarize, in this documentary, I've taken you on a journey through one of the most important stories in world history. From the buildup, creation, and eventual use of nuclear weapons, and then to some of the impacts they have today. Overall, we can clearly see how the creation of nuclear weapons has changed life as we know it, and how it was a historical turning point in warfare, politics, and the course of World War II.